Chad, you're a very smart guy and I love talking to you. So how the last several weeks have been for you?
Yeah, so certainly I think most of us are all in this boat of changing times. We were marching through late winter and I would say normal and I think everybody all experienced the low commodity prices. And so, as nutritionists, our job is to influence that economics. And so we slowed pigs down and then we all experienced the COVID symptoms. And so as things evolve and they continue to evolve, they've changed. And I would say the answer and solution for every person, either on this call or within the swine industry, is different. So our experience so far has been that going into it, we were getting what I would say more current on weight, or we brought our weights down. And we had that luxury, if you want to call it that, because we had a few PRRS breaks. And so we had some space to give. And now as the plant slowdowns or shutdowns or whatever you want to call them have occurred, we've been able to accept more of that. And so I would say until about 2 or 3 weeks ago, for us anyway, here at NFP, is when we started some of the interventions that, my job became more active in the slowdown of animals going to market. And so I know a lot of our industry partners have experienced it before then, but that's really kind of what's happened to us. And so I would say in the last 3 weeks, my job has become more interesting, if you want to call that the right word. And so that's really how we are. And we're trying to manage that probably on a barn by barn basis based on what animals we're able to market. So that's really kind of the changes that we've seen in the last couple of weeks.
From a nutrition standpoint, Chad, if you can highlight for us some of the strategies that you had to implement.
Yeah, I think, a lot of us knew some of these, and I know you mentioned a couple really good names on this call, and there's probably more. What I would say was kind of interesting is if I go back, like Marcio, some of the work you did when you were with PIC and any of the other things, is we know what those maximum performance are for average daily gain, right? And we have very good models for that, and I have my models too. But with this happening, it was ironic because I had to look farther back, right? I like how far and how slow I wanted to bring these pigs down. It was kind of create a renewal of finding that information. Hey, if I go to 90% or 87% or whatever that number is, how slow can I grow those pigs and what's that impact on feed efficiency? And we probably, most of us know generally what the optimal performance is, but this whole slowing them down less than optimal performance was kind of new. And so spent a lot of time trying to review that and model that. Asked a lot of people, what are the interactive effects if we're deficient in or limiting in several amino acids, what does that impact have? And so I think some of the work that Iowa State has done has been pretty valuable and timely in the industry. I know there's lots of people have lots of strategies. Like the fiber strategy, I think is really good and it's interesting. But like a lot of people that went to it, it became difficult to find the fiber source, at least for us. So we could do that and implement it. Because, shortly before all this happened, the ethanol industry kind of backed off. And so the availability of distillers also had changed or became cost prohibitive. And so that kind of influences somewhere in there. I think, some of the mostly corn diet works well. The calcium chloride diet, I think, is something that people have done at various times. The calcium phosphorus ratio is interesting that people have implemented. And the branched chain amino acids or isoleucine deficient, I think, gives a response. And so you know, we really kind of looked at a combination of those things. And, you know, my job and ours was to hold as many of these pigs so we can slowly let them get to market. And so we kind of use a combination of them or solution to get the immediate effect. And then hopefully moving forward here, we'll manage them better on a group by group basis. So.
Okay. Very cool. Do you think that, do you have a good guess for how many days did you buy with that strategy?
So interesting, right before the call, the gentleman, Cody, who's responsible for marketing, gave me a call, and he kind of said that you might actually know what you're doing, because it would appear that pigs that we had last week, I held to the same weight as we did this week.
Okay. Wow.
So, you know, we've been doing that strategy for, depending on the barns, 10 days. Now, that's not our long-term solution, right? So, you know, we pushed, let's say, market pigs at our 280 down to what looks like about 4 to 4.5 pound inclusion. And so how that was done was probably a combination of the isoleucine thing, a little bit less lysine, would probably be in a little bit of the calcium phosphorus thing, in combination with just raising the barn temperature slightly. So that worked for us. Now, how other people, you know, you really got to look through and figure out which one works. But so far, that's what we're doing. And I think what people have to remember is, if you look, we have a normal distribution within our system of pig weight, right? Mm-hmm. But as we market them, we'll have some bigger pigs that we need to get out. And those are barns, but then within those barns, right, we have another subpopulation that we still want to grow, so we get them out. But weight is one thing, and time or access to barn is a different thing. So you could have pigs that started at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. And some grew faster than the other. And, you know, you could have empty barns and they're ready to receive pigs over here, but this barn that grew slower has more pigs coming in, but they're not of the ideal weight. And so we're trying to manage that within and across our system better, because we have barns that are, you know, of heavy market weight and need to go, and we have barns that need to go just because they're not of market weight. So I think people are going to get better at managing that. Okay,
very good. I'll tell the audience the same thing I told them last call we had, which is you guys are too quiet in the beginning. So make sure to start bringing the questions up there, and we'll get rolling here. Appreciate that, Chad. So, okay, that's COVID-19, and I think everyone, at least to some degree, it's a little tired of this whole thing that's happening for 8 weeks, and it's tough for everyone, especially there in Midwest, Chad. But if we can put a hold on that for a minute here, how's everything else going? So production-wise, I guess, any strategies that you're doing, or nutrition-wise, or research, if you can just give some updates overall.
Yeah. So outside of that, I would say, you know, production-wise is doing really well. You know, sow farms are performing well. We continue to march forward with sow productivity. I would say that we've seen, along with the industry, our growth rates and feed conversions prior to this were pretty decent, right? There's some variability in there that probably need to work and push out of the system. Pretty happy with the genetic progress that we're making. Right? We're seeing improvement in or pigs weaned per sow and so forth over the last couple of years. I'd say we kind of have a renewed interest in the past several months, or maybe a little bit longer than that, years of on sow body condition score and pre-weaning mortality, right? So that's really come back to help us get the most viable pigs out of the system. and so forth. On the research side, Zach and I, and we've been working with various people on different things. One of the things that I would say that's personally interested me is, and I think I've talked with a couple of you on it, is we're looking at that influence of sow parity on gilt or offspring performance, right?
Okay.
And so we've always known that piglets from gilt litters were lighter or had more of an immune challenge maybe than others. And so we kind of went back and looked at is there interventions that we can do either on the farm or with these animals that would help their immune status if it's a direct fed microbial or something. And what we've found is that those differences in gilt litters are probably much greater than we expected in the past. I think a lot of people, when I've talked to them, they've seen those differences, 2 to 3 pounds at the end of the nursery phase. In our data sets, we'd say that it's probably closer to 5, maybe greater. And by the time we get to finishing, we certainly can double that. And they're the majority of the pigs that we're treating and pulling off and giving care to. So we are just trying to work with ways that we could identify them to make it easier for our production staff to help them make a full value pig in our system. And so we were working on some different projects with that. We probably did a series of 3 or 4 studies. Haven't found really anything that jumped out that gave us a benefit yet.
Okay.
And so I think we'll pick up some of that research here going forward again.
Okay. I have a question on that, Arena Chad. So if,
overall, kind of that's
the question is, so if I understood correctly, you're looking at, gilt leaders and ways to help them out, right? Strategies to improve the performance. Okay. It's interesting. I mean, boy, we just had another webinar a few months ago or so, and my bias is that based on Mike Ellis' work and others is that it's extremely hard to change those things, at least to change, if you put an intervention and you maintain that intervention all the way to the end, maybe you're going to be fine. But if you change it and then you take that intervention away, it's almost like they're likely going to go back to normal in general, not always, but that's my bias. But I appreciate the efforts, and that's how we progress.
Yeah, and I would say you're exactly right, and that's what we experienced, because it seems for us, and our data would say that there's maybe a small window in there where these nutritional, like direct fed microbials or something, we can influence it, but it's for a very small phase, right? And even if we go longer, it washes out. And one of the questions I've always had is if we add these copper and zinc products, how is that influencing the gut microbiome? Because it's really kind of set, right, early in that suckling period as they go through. And so I don't know if we can influence it. The one thing that was interesting, we had done, Dr. Murray and some others had worked with some people here to look at the microbiome of different sow farms, right? And we we thought that we could influence them by providing inoculating at the sow farm. We didn't get much of a result after that. And so we had done a work, I'd worked with some people here about 2 years ago, and we went through and we characterized, right, the microbiome, what we had called good flows and poor flows, right? And there was no similarities between them because, and so I really think we don't know yet what that microbiome is for a good flow versus a bad flow. So I don't know what to change it to, I guess. That would be our experience so far.
Interesting. Yeah, and I've seen, Chad, same thing, a few microbiome studies where when we stopped the stimulus or whatever intervention, in a week or 2, we went back to the normal flora, so I'll be curious to see any other studies where that remained all the way to the end,
Yeah, and I think, there's lots of, there seems to be lots of good work that's continuing to be done in this space, right? But at least for us, I remain cautious because if I find something that works within what I call one production flow, I don't know if it'll work within a different production flow, right? Because those gut bugs are different between those flows. And so I would be really cautious to apply that logic over all of them.
Very good, Chad. Makes sense. We got 2 questions here. We want to see more questions, guys, more questions. First question from Chad Risley. He's asking about if you're implementing any feed mitigation strategies to control or lower the risk of possible feed pathogens.
Yeah, so today, you know, with the cost of things and so forth, we're using a fat product in the sow diets and the boar studs, really, to manage that portion. The grow finish herd, we're not. So if we looked at an overall risk management standpoint, trying to those early pigs where they're most vulnerable in the sow farms, right, is where we're kind of trying to mitigate them, I guess. So one of the questions I've had for several of you guys and others is, as a nutritionist, right, we like to do economic calculations. I think, Marcio, you've talked about that recently with lots of different people, right? But it's difficult for us because we know certainly what the cost of those pathogen mitigants are, right? But what the return is. So I think everybody looks at them a little bit different. And today they're just difficult to look at. But today we've remained that within our system, given the current environment, protecting the sow farms and the early nursery pigs.
That makes sense, Chad. Had Dan Jones. Hey Dan. He mentioned about the microbiome. So he says that change to microbiome in trials would be expected to go back to the population microbiome unless the treatment that changed that microbiome is implemented farm-wide. And I would probably add that, again, if you do farm-wide but you stop, then likely you might, I don't know for sure. That's based on the data that I've seen. So, but that's interesting. Thanks, Dan. Any other thoughts there, Chad, before we go to the next few questions we have here?
No, I have an analogy, but I'll be politically correct, and I'll probably hold it for now. Otherwise, you might get kicked off of Facebook, Marcio.
All right.
But
no,
yeah, it's difficult to change that and repopulate it long term.
Very good. Ben Barkovich. Hey, Ben. He's asking about, he has some flow of pigs with pelleted diets with very, very poor pellet quality. And do you have any recommendations to help improve pellet quality? And he also seen lots of stomach ulcers and things like that. And I know you love that subject there, Chad.
Yeah. So Ben, I'll tell you, I am fortunate that I live in the Midwest and I have lots of corn and lots of soybean meal around me. So it's really difficult for us to pellet. So today we're not a pelleting system. But for the viewers and people's amusement, I'll tell you a quick story. Mm-hmm. So early in my career, I worked for a feed company, and we used to make pelleted feed, right? And we'll just so I'm fresh out of undergraduate school, and I'm the plant superintendent at this new feed mill, and I'm supervising people probably almost twice my age, right? So they took advice pretty well, not to say the least. But my question for you, Ben, is do you see a difference within the week? Because I was pained by the second week that I learned that the pellet operator, we'll call him Mike could only pellet 60 ton of feed on Monday, right? That's all he could pellet, right? But on Friday, for some reason, he would get through all 120 ton before 1 o'clock and be gone. Mm-hmm. So, it's kind of back to that classic Monday car thing. Sorry, Ben, I don't have any other advice on pellet quality than you couldn't find anywhere else. But
yeah, Ben said, it changed. He said it does change every week for him. And then John said it, that's classic. Yeah, it's a tough one there, right? But I guess the overall comments on those areas that as long as it's less than 20% fines, and some people even argue, I know some large systems that even say, look, I'm not as concerned about pellet quality as long as it's flowing in the lines, you know.
Yeah, and actually, Marcio, keep conversation. I know Dan and there's some other people on the system. I think what's going to be interesting this year is that with how the corn harvest was last year, and with several of us going to corn soy type diets, at least here in the Midwest, as much as it a little bit pains me to say it is, we kind of miss that distillers for our feed flow standpoint, right? So as we start to go through summer, right, we see more of this fine powder stuff. And, I think it's becoming more difficult for the mills to maintain a good particle size or minimize the amount under 300 microns, like we often talk about, right? And so, well, I may take credit for holding those pigs down. Some of it might go just because of the amount of time that we have to beat on bins and auto feed events is becoming more. And I think that's going to be a real challenge as we move into hotter, more humid type diets. So
very interesting. Yeah, and one thing for sure there is that the data does suggest that when you pellet, you do see a little bit more ulcers, right? So.
Yep.
Very good. So question from Dr. John Bergstrom. Hi, John. Have you determined an optimal average herd parity for your system or herd parity structure based on the different models that you've run?
We have an idea, but I'm not sure if it's correct, quite honestly. And so it's a little bit of a balancing act, and I'm not really good at sow models, quite honestly. I know there's a couple of them out there, and so if you're having one willing to share with me, I think Carrie and I would like to look at it. But we believe there's an opportunity there for us to improve it. But sometimes I'm not sure if those sow models include the wean to finish performance differences between gilts and not. If I remember correctly, and when I looked through it, I think Dr. Boyd had done some talks several years ago, right? Dean had talked about parity segregated flow and the difference in production with some gain and some pig treatments and what that value is. But today, I guess we haven't looked at it, and I couldn't tell you, John, what that answer is.
Very good. Yeah, it's a tough one, especially genetic improvement, and how do you, if genetic improvement is going faster and faster, then that number is going to be changing too, right? The optimal balance. It's the tough one.
Right.
Go ahead, Chad.
So that was a question that I had for you, Marcio, with your background and people on the call is, so if you looked within your genetic multiplication herd, right? And if you believe in this gut microbiome, and I've talked to a couple of people on this, so when that piglet first suckles, right? If you took the piglets from, let's say, your gilt litters, right, because they're the highest indexing animals, and you were to suckle them, let's say, on a P2 or higher sow, right? Could you effectively influence the microbiome positively in that animal, which would then eventually influence the downstream production within that herd?
Interesting.
Right?
So
you would swap a maternal barrel for a gilt, right? And you would try to do that early. Would that, and somebody in my conversations with people have said that there's a benefit for it being on your own mother or not. Now, I've not found that paper yet, but I think that's an interesting thing that we've talked about with Carrie and others to see if it would be a benefit, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what you're saying is basically using that improved, because the improved genetics, no, not even the genetic companies know exactly what has been improved. They only know that they select for everything and you have a better pig, right? Because is it a little bit of an improved in microbiome? Maybe, right? So what you're saying that microbiome, potentially improved microbiome, you know, could affect the not as updated genetic from that standpoint. So that's interesting.
Right. And could you improve your downstream productions with them by putting the good, you know, like some of this fecal transplant stuff that's happening out there, right? Could we change let's say an unhealthy flow to a healthy flow by simply providing more and more animals of a healthy biome into the farm? So
interesting. Yeah, there's some work for Dr. Nick Gabler in the call here and others. Very cool.
It's all in theory and so forth. Somebody's got to get it done though.
Yes, very nice. Very good. Guys, you can send a few more questions here. Chad, I have a few what I call random questions that I like to know. I know everyone likes pigs here, but I also like to ask other things so we can always get better, improve ourselves. So, Chad, for you, what's been one investment or the best investment you've made? Could be time, energy, money. What's been something that you've done that turned out to be very, very helpful for you?
Oh boy. An investment that I enjoy, or an investment that I'm hoping gives me great returns, or
any of those, the best one.
So
the one that is the
thing I enjoy probably it's not a boat. I don't have one. Sorry, man. But yeah, no, I live in Minnesota too. I would say it'd be my kids, right? I really enjoy having them in conversations, and so forth. I'm gnashing my teeth as we go through some of the teenage years, something you get to look forward to, Marcio.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoy watching them learn and grow when they do it, right? That's always fun. You know, and I like to see how they mature and come along. And so the investment in time and putting effort into their development, I really like that when it works. I'm told that when I get to the other side of the teenage years, it'll be well worth it. So we'll see. Cool. So I have 2 teenage boys and an 8-year-old, and so very diverse population. But it's they're fun investments to spend time with.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. No, thanks for that. Other one I have, Chad, is what advice would you give to a smart, driven college student about to enter the real world of the swine industry? And also, what advice should they ignore?
Oh, the best advice I would give you is don't believe everything you think. And I'm one of these, but I think I've gotten better at it. But sometimes we have these great ideas and we stew on them, especially in our jobs, and we'll do the math or we'll come up with a justification for what we believe is right. And it might not be true. And so I really encourage you to surround yourself with people who can give you honest feedback and say, you know, that's a nice idea, but it's not right because X, Y, Z, and not the people that are going to be a pat on the back and say, yep, it's a great idea and go forth. You still need them to, when it is a good idea, but you also need to have the people to say, hey, but I remember when you're first out of school, you've read all the books, you got the degree, you have all the ambition. Just be careful to remember that everything you think, it might not be right. Don't believe it. So
I like that. No, that's super good. I know I know Elon, and I don't know Elon Musk. I wish I did, and you can see the book here on the top. Even though, if you guys saw the name of his baby that was born this week is the craziest name ever for a baby. But anyways, he says the same thing. He talks about having negative feedback. Really, is a good way to improve. So I appreciate that. How about an advice that people should ignore, or young people should ignore?
Yeah, that's a little bit harder. What advice to ignore? One of the things that, as a younger person coming out, you challenge the status quo, right? And so when people say it can't be done, what I would say is people that say it can't be done shouldn't interrupt those people who are doing it, right? And so if you move into an organization or something and they say, no, we can't do that or something, ask why, right? Try to figure out, because either because of a technology or habits, right? Mm-hmm. People are afraid to try something new. And even within things that I've worked in, we've developed a habit, and you just train the next person on doing it the same way. And there might have been a one-off to do it that way, and it's no longer valid. And so don't be afraid to challenge the status quo and understand. So just because somebody says it can't be done doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It means you need to understand why you shouldn't do it, because you might have a better way.
Yes, I love it. I think I saw that quote as well on Dr. Mike Tokash's office. I think he has that quote which says, don't let those that are not doing it stop those that are doing it, right? I love it. Thank you. I have 2 more questions. If the folks don't have any other questions, let me double check here. There's one that came in here. So Johnny Lopez, hi Johnny, he's asking, with as much media that flows out today communicating information, in quotes, in swine production, nutrition, where does a busy person like yourself update oneself?
That's a good question. So I go to SwineNet. I talk to Marcio to get all my answers.
No plugs, no plugs. No, seriously.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I'm probably honestly, I'm the last person you should ask that, because I don't engage in the media a lot. I don't watch the news a lot. I don't do Facebook a lot, things like that. And that's simply because I try to invest my time in getting things done. And so it's a double-edged sword. And so I spend my time on work and talking with my colleagues to help them improve their lives and making things better within the system. I work with my children and the household to improve those things and things I interact, because that's really the things that I care about and I want to focus on and make better. And so as busy as we are as production nutritionists and so forth, just talking with people, that either on this call or salespeople is really kind of how I get my information, right? And certainly lately, it's become more of a challenge. And I apologize, because I can tell you most emphatically since the last 2 or 3 weeks, a lot of my time, has become pretty limited. And so, I'll get to work early. I'll see a couple emails. I'll try to respond to them. And then I'm off to the races to get whatever I'm trying to get done for the day and put out fires. And often, sadly for myself, Marcio, you and I have talked about this many times, is I'll get to the end of the day and there's probably 75 to 100 emails that I might not have responded to or even looked at, right? Half of them are just technical information that I'm going to get from within our system, right? What daily weights are, how many pigs that we farrowed, what feed went where, things like that. And so they're important information for me to see, but I may not get time to it. And then there's probably another 25% of those that are people looking for direction or have something that I need to respond to. and then there's friends and colleagues of the industry that I try to keep in contact. But my challenge is, like, it's 6 o'clock and I want to go home and be engaged and refresh myself. Right. And I don't, and I mean to come back to it, and all of a sudden it's 2 weeks later. So I'm not a good person at that. So I couldn't tell you what platform it is, because there is, for myself, there's no one that I use, I guess.
Yeah, it's a tough one. A lot of information, trying to digest everything, right?
Yeah. I will say, one thing I have done more of, and Marcio, you're included, I guess, but honestly, I haven't kept as up to date with them because I've been on the phone more, as I go from event to event, right? Listening to podcasts about various things are helpful, right? And I'm probably guilty, as a lot of people, is, look at a headline, if it interests me, it'll grab me, I'll make the 5-minute read. But if it's an email and you get it from me and it's more than 4 bullet points and 3, by the time I get 7 in, you've probably lost me. I've chased a squirrel somewhere else.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, very good. I think that's it, my friends. One question to wrap up here, Chad. Probably, if you can, there's a lot of folks from the industry, from production systems. I see Dr. Andrea Hanson here, and also suppliers. So the question is, excuse me. The question is, and also researchers. So the question is, give everyone a challenge. So you, as a nutritionist in a very good production system, what do you need? What is something that you are missing that it should happen in the next year or so to make everything better and easier?
To make everything better, I think just having the processing plants up and working would be great in understanding that. That's the short answer.
Yeah.
But the last token I would leave with everybody is, one of the things that I've gotten better in the last probably 2 to 3 years is there's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it just says, finish each day and be done with it, right? You've done all that you could. If you've had some blunders, there's some absurdities that have happened, but, don't hold on to them anymore. Start tomorrow with it as a new day, and look with serenity and high spirit that you're going to be unencumbered to all the old nonsense of yesterday, right? And so as I think, as all of us have worked in agriculture, and we've seen how much we've progressed on these different things, if it's carbon footprint, if it's feed efficiency, if it's, pounds of, viable protein product to people, we've gotten much better. And the times that we're going through are really tough on us and our colleagues. But just remember that you walk away every day, you figured something out, and you're going to be a little bit better. And we're going to grow from this. You're going to learn new processes and things that are make you better. So don't go home thinking that you lost for the day. Go home feeling that, hey, I figured something out and I know how to accept this challenge. Now, you may have more challenges tomorrow, but we're figuring this out bit by bit. Look forward, not backwards. You're not going that direction. You're going forward. So look forward.
Very good. Very profound, Chad. I appreciate that. It's a tough moment for a lot, most everyone in the pig industry, and I'm sure we're gonna go through it and come out better as last time. So
yeah, I think we all will.
Very good, my friends. Everyone here, thanks so much. Good night, everyone. Thanks, Chad, for your time.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice evening.